Hi, welcome to this video on creating effective resumes. We all know that resume screening is the first process for any job application process, and resume in itself is responsible to create your first impression. So let's learn how to make a great one. Writing or creating your resume. I would specifically like to take a minute on this. I would not say that resume is something that is to be written. It is an art to create a resume. Why I would say this is, uh, let's say you would have done tons of things to make your academic profile really strong. You would have been a really dynamic person, being a part of a lot of extracurricular activities and all. But if you cannot present them in the best way possible on your resume, no justice is done to that hard work, right? So it's very important that whatever we have done, those details, those things are presented on the resume in the best possible way, in the most impactful way, and that is what we are going to see today, right? And why do you think that is important? So let's first answer this question. How much time on an average does a recruiter spend on a resume? I don't know how many of you have an idea on this, but a lot of researchers say that it is just 5 to 7 seconds. Yes, guys, it is just 5 to 7 seconds that a recruiter spends on your one page of resume, from which he decides whether to select you or reject you for the next round of your selection or your application. This is the only reason that how you write in the resume becomes very, very important, right? A few more facts about the selection process. Let's see if we know them. What percentage of candidates are rejected just based on the resume? So yes, resume is generally the first screening process that most of the recruiters use, and 80%, a huge chunk of 80% of the candidates gets rejected. So for today's session, our main agenda should be that post this we should lie in those 20% of the candidates those get selected. What percentage of resumes do you think are rejected due to unprofessional email ID? Yes, it's again a huge chunk of 76%. We may think it's a very trivial thing, it's a very small thing, but if I have students on this listening to me, students or freshers, this is one major issue with them, right? The email IDs, you can't have an email ID like a coolbuddy@gmail.com. You have to have a professional email ID when you apply to a professional place. Next, what percentage of resumes are rejected due to typos? Now, just imagine the recruiter has in his hand your only one page of your profile, and he sees spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes. Imagine the impression that you have on him on the very first sight. So, yes, we have 61% of such candidates who still have typos there. What percentage of employers use LinkedIn to search or check on the candidates? That is 86%. Again, nowadays, I'm sure most of the participants here must be knowing about LinkedIn, but just still, I'll tell you. LinkedIn is one of the most popularly used most popularly used site to connect professionally. And nowadays, employers use LinkedIn profile the most to check on the candidates to see their profile, which is why it becomes very, very important that we keep our profile really updated on the LinkedIn. And today, few things that we see will also be helpful to you to write down your details on LinkedIn as well, right? Okay, so these were few facts. Now, when we come across applications, I'm sure we would come across some these terminologies when it comes to, let's say, Indian companies. If I talk about right now, we would have heard CV somewhere, we would have heard resume somewhere. So let me just tell you what is the difference between them. CV, also known as curriculum vitae. So CV is generally a very detailed description of your professional summary or your professional life. Generally, CV is used in a place where you have to apply in some academic industry, or let's say a research profile, or let's say for a PhD. So, which is why CV can be anywhere between 2 to 8 pages in length, and it is more in detail of your professional life. Generally applies to people who have more than 15 years of experience. Now, when we come to resume, so resume is a very brief description of your profile, which consists of your academic background, your work experience, your extracurriculars, but it is a very brief, concise, to the point document, which means it has to be strictly restricted to one page. It is very important that we have our details mentioned there and it fits in one page and still we write down everything. And resume is more like a profile oriented or a profile focused. So let's say if you're applying for one job application, your resume has to be focused to that job application versus the other, right? And next is biodata. So that is something that we use for our matrimony purposes, right? Which consists all of the other things except the professional things as well, which is not required when it comes to CV or resume. So now we'll go ahead with resume, which is our topic for today. Now, broadly, we are going to cover these 4 things as far as resume is concerned. First is what to and not to include in a resume. Next is the most impactful, effective way of writing various sections in a resume. Third, we'll be covering is formatting rules. What kind of formatting rules should we follow while creating a resume? And last that we'll look to is a sample format, or I would say the preferred format that you should use while you are applying professionally to any corporate. Right? So let's start with the first point over here, what to and not to include in a resume. So I have just taken down 30 things that people include, not include, and I have segregated those 30 things in 3 types: personal information, professional information, and format checklist. So let's start with the personal information. Name, yes, definitely to be included. Contact number, of course, that is how they'll come back to you. Age, birth date. I have seen a lot of resumes including age or birth date. It is not required. The recruiter does not need to know how old you are to recruit you for a particular role. Next is email ID. Yes, of course, and I repeat, professional email ID is required. Language is known. Guys, just to avoid confusion over here, it is not the technical languages or computer languages I'm talking about, but this is the languages that we speak. There is no need to write that you know Hindi, Gujarati, English, Marathi, etc. Okay. Next is address. No, you don't need to mention your complete postal address, but yes, city is what you should mention in case that may be of some help in certain kind of roles. Photograph. Now this is always photograph thing has always been in discussion. Generally, it is not advisable to put a photograph on the resume, but there will be few institutes, I mean colleges, who will give a very specific format to the students that they are supposed to follow. If that format has photograph, you can include it. But if you are applying externally off campus, photograph is not preferable to be put on a resume. Next is gender. It's a strict no. There is no need to mention your gender anywhere on the resume, neither your marital status. They are not concerned. Okay. Next that we go to is the professional information. The work experience is, of course, the most important thing, and it should be given the maximum justice when it comes on the resume. Academics, definitely they want to know your background. Internships, very, very important for fresher students because they don't have work experience. Key projects, extremely important, specifically in branches like engineering, where projects play a very major role, or in branches of architecture, where projects play a very important role. It is necessary. Achievements. So, yes, of course, you have to be boastful about achievements if you have had any and put them on your resume. Extracurriculars, yes. Hobbies, no. Okay. Hobbies is something which should not have a place on a resume ideally. But guys, please listen. Let's say that if you are a person who doesn't have a lot of things to put on the resume, and ultimately the resume just comes out to be 3/4 of a page, of a side of a page, I mean, then you can include a small one line section of hobby and just mentioning those hobbies which you are ready to discuss about in detail in the interview, right? Okay, moving forward, I repeat, if you have any questions anywhere, please make sure you note them down, because all of these things can have a lot of personal queries also, that should I put a particular thing of my profile in the resume or not. So please note them down. Next is LinkedIn IT. Definitely it should be there. It creates a good impression. Strengths, weaknesses, there is no need to add strengths or weaknesses anywhere on your resume. Certifications, yes, of course, you should add certifications there. Now, coming to the formatting checklist, paragraphs, no, never. Your resume should not have text written in a paragraph format. Bullet points, yes, always. Length of a resume should be restricted to one page. Few of you may find this difficult, but it is possible and you have to do it. Declaration, not required. References, not required as a part of resume, right? Generally, a resume goes along with the cover letter. So this cover letter thing we'll be covering in some other part of my webinar. But references can be a part of cover letter, but no need to put them down in the resume. Career objective, no, it's an old thing. Now it is not advisable to put any career objective. Graphics, I mean infographics, any bar, graphs, charts. Please don't try to be very fancy putting your data in those formats. Not required. Bold keywords, yes. Wherever you need the recruiter to pay attention, please use bold to put down that data. Why? We have already seen that a recruiter takes hardly 5 to 7 seconds on your resume. So it's very important that we highlight what we want to highlight to the recruiter very clearly. Typos is, of course, a strict no-no. Colors. Should we use colors on a resume? No. One color is fine. We will see in a later part of this webinar itself how we can use one color, but never try to use multiple colors on a resume. All right. So this is about what to and not to include there. Now, moving forward with the second part, which was effective way of writing various sections. Now, this is the most important part of the webinar here, and which is why all of you should be paying your attention. First section over here is academics, right? Generally, what I prefer in a resume is always a tabular format to represent any kind of data, whether it be academics, whether it be work experience. So you can always use tabular format with or without borders. Why tabular format? Two major reasons. One, that it gives out the information which recruiter is looking out for very, very clearly. So let's say for academics, recruiter just wants to look to your degree, your year of passing, your percentage. So that information comes out very clearly, easily, right? So that is one reason. Second reason is tabular format always uses lesser space than the general paragraph format or a bullet point format. So I would generally, and it looks very organized. That is why I would use a tabular format for academics. And this I have shown you as an example which gives you the headers that you can put in the academics table. Okay. Um, Next is a work experience or internship. So for this being the most important part, I'm just going to give you two examples in which I have described the same work experience in two different ways. So I'll just give you a minute to go through both of them. Same work experience is described in two different ways. You will yourself feel the difference while you read them. So I have mentioned the company, I have mentioned the duration of my experience, right? The position that I was holding in the company, area sales executive. Now, if I go to the bullet points, the first bullet point says handling two distributors in the food division of South Mumbai. And the same point, when I write down, it says handling two distributors with a combined turnover of 1.5 CR per month in the food division of South Mumbai. Right? So I hope you can see the impact of that 1.5 CR per month, that small little detail that I have given here, at least gives me a better idea of the scale of work that you are handling. Leading a team of salesmen versus leading a team of 20 salesmen for handling 30 plus categories across food channels. So again, that gives me the scale of work that you are handling, right? Because leading a team can be 2 people team, 3 people team, but when I mention 20 people team, that actually gives out your management skills. Delivering growth in overall business under my leadership versus delivering growth of 10% on overall business in a span of 6 months, right? Directly interacting with clients and negotiating versus managing distribution of top featured brands of HUL like Pepsodent, Lux. So guys, it's the same thing that I have written. It's the same work that I have done, right? It's the same hard work put in. But how I write it down in the resume creates a major impact. I have seen in my experience students with slightly lesser of a profile, they can clear the interviews better, or they can be selected for the interviews just because of how impressive their resume has been. Okay, so if you see, there are few things that I have concentrated on here to make it more impactful. That is making those invisible things visible to the recruiter. And for making this, I have majorly used these three things: brands, quantities, and details. If in your work experience, in your internship, you have ever got an opportunity that you have worked with a well-known brand in any smallest possible way, make sure to mention it. That creates a good impact. Anywhere that you can quantify your effort, you can quantify your result, you can quantify the people team you are managing, please use numbers. Numbers are always, they catch the attention better than the words first, and they are always easier to remember than the words, which is why you should always use numbers to make it more impactful. And third is the details, where you need to get into the necessary details there. Right. So, yes, it's important that we make the invisible visible. I'm sure a lot of us would have heard of this STAR approach while answering in the interview. So, just going through this approach, STAR stands for situation, task, action, results. So generally this approach is not completely used in resume, but it is completely used when you're answering a question in an interview. So in an interview, when I'm answering the question, I should make sure that I describe my situation properly. I describe my role in that situation properly. What was the action I took and what were the results? And now if I have to apply this same approach to the resume, I have to make sure that the last two parts, action I did and results I got, should be mentioned in the resume. I may not mention situation and task in a resume, but action and results definitely can be a part of the resume wherever you think it is important. All right. Okay. Um, the next thing that we can look ahead after your work experience or your internship description is extracurricular activities. So, a few things to keep in mind while mentioning your extracurricular activities. First is always use bullet points while you are mentioning it. Second is always start each and every point with a verb. Secured, managed, participated, stood. Always start your point with a verb. Most important point should always be mentioned first. Put the year in which that extracurricular activity has taken place and you have been a part of it in the bracket at the end of the point. Avoid putting any points which are before your graduation, that is like 5-6 years old, unless they are very important. Like, let's say if you have been a part of any national level event, you have won any national level competition, you have got any scholarships. So if there is something very important from your school life that you want to mention, that's fine. Otherwise, please don't mention the trivial activities that you have been a part of in your school on the resume. Next is, if you have more than one achievements, make a separate section called achievements. So, okay, here I'll take a minute, guys. I have seen most of the resumes get goofed up over here. So, in extracurricular, there are two things: extracurricular activities, extracurricular achievements. First, what can be categorized as activities and what can be categorized as achievements? Okay, so achievements is something that, let's say, if you have won in a competition, if you have won a scholarship, if you have been in the core committee member of organizing an event, so something which is not usual, you are selected, you are elected to do something, or you are standing out of the crowd, you have achieved something more than the rest. Those things can be categorized as achievement. Participating in an event is not an achievement, it's an extracurricular activity. Okay, that is not that you are standing out of the crowd. So, first of all, it is very important that we understand the difference between achievement and activities. And I am expecting most of the doubts over here. Some of you may come up with the questions, can this be put in this category or that? So we can take that again at the end, right? Now, if you think that you have more than one achievement, then you can definitely make a separate section of achievement altogether and not put it along with the activities. Achievements can be both academic as well as extracurricular. But if you think that no, there is nothing major to show in the achievement, then don't put a section there in just one point. Then you include that along with your extracurricular. You can just put the heading extracurricular achievements / activities. That should be fine. Okay, put a separate section only if there are more than 2 points to mention. Okay. So these are just few examples that I have put here for your extracurricular achievements or activities, following the few points that I just told you in the previous slide. So if I have to, let's say, talk about a national level conference as a chairperson or first position in inter-college badminton tournament, core committee member of cultural committee. So all of these can be categorized as achievements. Definitely the last one is an activity because I participated in the robotics workshop. Right, so that you can say it as an extracurricular activity. Okay, so I hope this is getting clear to all of you guys. Okay, uh, moving ahead, next thing that we will see in the resume is your formatting rules, right? What kind of rules should you follow for formatting the resume? Few very straightforward rules I'm going to tell over here, and you should be following them. First of all, we have already talked about this. The length of the resume should be tried to be restricted to one side of page, right? Um, Next is the font size. Okay, very important. It can be either 10, 11, or 12 depending on the amount of content you have. And of course, when you are writing a resume, your headers should be one font size higher than the body content, right? But your font size should not go below 10 or should not increase 12 in any case. Okay, this is for the content of the resume. You can have a font size of 14 to just mention your name at the top. That is fine. But this is for the content of the whole resume. Okay. Font type. Please use simple formal font types when you are putting down data on the resume. I've just mentioned few of them over here. Something like Times New Roman, Georgia, Bell Empty, Arial. So all of these are formal font types. You can use any of them. It should not look very stylish. Next is presentation style. Please use tables with or without borders, bullet points, sections with headers, right? Please don't use paragraphs. If someone would have observed when I showed you the example of work experience, I had used a table but without border, right? So that is how you can always use tables without borders to show your data in a more organized way in a resume. That's like making the best use of the very little space available to you. Next is highlights. Please make use of bolds, italics, capital, underline, whatever you want to highlight the keywords or important figures, data that you want recruiter to see on in those 6 seconds. Remember, 6 seconds recruiter should be able to see those keywords in your resume. So make sure you highlight them, right? Next is colors. Content should be strictly written in black only, right? You can use maximum one color either to highlight the headers in your resume or to highlight the name and the contact information, but not more than that. And also, which color to use is also very important. Never use bright colors, use formal colors, shades of blues, shades of grays, right? Darker shades of, let's say, green or maroon, but don't use bright pink, purple anywhere in the resume, right? Language. Please never use first person pronouns. I did this. Never use I anywhere in the resume. It should always be mentioned as a third person, not first person. Use past tense for past experiences, present tense for present ones. Make sure you follow these grammatical rules over here for your data in the resume. Okay. Now, the next part, which is the sample format that we will be looking, and I think this should clear our complete discussion that we had about the resume. So let's look at the sample format. So this is the sample format over here. So I've just put down everything in one page to show you that it can fit. Now I'm going to zoom in a little to help you read that better. So let's say in the top I will mention by name. Okay. Then after name, can see one line where I have mentioned CRISIL, Kotak Mahindra Bank, MBA Finance, BEIT. So now that one line is like one line summary of your background, which will include your work experience as well as your academic background. So that gives recruiter in fact a very first view background of you, and it helps him to look ahead in the resume, right? So that is like one line profile summary. Then the details that the recruiter might want to know about is your email ID, contact number, LinkedIn ID, and city. Again, just to tell you guys that even this that I have written is in a tabular format. It is just without borders. Okay. All right. Next section is about the work experience. Okay. Now, for people who have work experience, please put work experience above your academic qualifications. That is why I've kept work experience first. Uh, for students, for freshers, please keep academic qualifications first, and then you will go ahead with your internships and all. Right? So, in work experience, just see how I have mentioned your multiple work experiences over here. First, company name, location, duration, designation, right? Now, whenever you are describing your work experience, please make sure that you are mentioning what were your key roles and responsibilities. Of course, quantify the description as much as possible. Please use numbers, data, right? And never ever forget to mention any awards that you have won during your tenure there, any targets that you have achieved, any significant achievement. If there is there, please mention it, because that gives your profile a lot more credibility than if you don't. Okay. So yes, that applies to all the descriptions that you give. Multiple designations in a single company. Again, company name too. So again, I have used your fonts 12, 11, 10 respectively to mention various headers. Academic qualifications similar to the table that I showed you before, right? Internships, major projects. So again, internships, major projects, the same rules that apply to work experience also applies to internships and major projects when you are mentioning them, right? So that is what will be applied here as well. Um, Next is certifications. So there may be a possibility that during your studies or during your work experience you have uh, gained some external certifications. Please don't forget to mention them, right, along with the month and the year when you have got that certificate, conducted by which, let's say, from which organization have you got that certificate, and if the certification has a validity, please mention that, right? Next is technical proficiencies. Now, this section may not be applicable to all the resumes. It will only be applicable to resumes which are used to apply for a technical role. So, if you are, let's say, applying for a programming role in a company, and if you have a proficiency in few programming languages, you should mention them over here, right? So again, as I said, this section will be just applicable to those. Let's say if you're applying to a management kind of a role in finance, and if you have a proficiency of any software of financial analysis, then please mention it over here, right? So it goes according to the role that you apply for. Next section here is extracurricular achievements and activities. So if you observe over here, I have segregated my extracurricular achievements or activities also in four different parts, because I had activities in all of these areas: leadership roles, sports, socials, others. You can also do that depending on how your activities are spread out. You can also use this, and that's a good way to again get the attention of the interviewer, right? And last, as I had mentioned before also, areas of interest. In case your resume allows that much space to you, you may include it, or you may choose not to include it if you don't have a very interesting significant hobby to talk about. It is not necessary that everyone should and will have a hobby. Okay, so if you think that you are not comfortable talking about any hobby in detail, please don't mention it. Otherwise, you may put yourself in trouble, right? So, this is how your various sections can be represented in a resume, which appears like this on one page. Okay, and moving ahead after the sample format, final checklist. After my resume is made, what are the things I should be definitely looking for before I submit it? First, please make sure that your resume is proofread. We know we are confident on ourselves, but still we tend to make a lot of silly mistakes which we may not see ourselves. Please make sure that at least three people go through your resumes for spell check, language check, grammar check, and you get it proofread before you submit. Next is, make sure that you save your resume in your PDF format to send a soft copy to any applications if required. Send a PDF format, or take a print in case of any upcoming interviews, but don't take a lot of prints of resume. I'll tell you why. Of course, saving paper is one thing, but generally your resumes should, they need to be tailored depending on the different applications they are used for. Okay, also, let's say you have made a resume today. Next time when you apply, you may have something to add in or change in the resume, right? So just print the copies you need for in the current application. And as I said, please, this is the difference between CV and resume that we discussed. This is the main characteristic of a resume, that it has to be tailor-made, customized for different applications. Using same resume for all the applications is not going to work. Okay, if you are applying for a role of a, let's say, financial manager, you have to highlight those things in your profile which are required for that role, which matches the description of that profile. Okay, so it has to be tailored as per the job description. You can't have, I repeat, you can't have same resume for multiple job descriptions. So this is the final checklist that you should be going through. And let's say if you want to get your resume personally reviewed, you can definitely reach out to me on these. I've already given you the basic hygiene factors that should be followed. So you can take care of those by yourself, I'm sure. But still, resume is something that every person may have different queries, because every person's profile is different, every person's points are different, right? So if you want that your resume needs to be reviewed and remade personally, one-to-one basis, you can reach out to me on this email ID. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and you will always get updates in all of these areas like resume, personal interviews, group discussions, aptitude preparation, because this is where these are the areas that I generally have my training modules in. Thank you all for watching this video. If you really found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave your comments below. Thank you.